Because you only call, so I want to kick you out.
激我 out，你乜料啫得嘛？屌查你！俾啲 English please。
This episode, I start the night at Grand Villa, but that is not where I end up. I was hoping to hop into a 5-10 or 2-5 game. Surprisingly, the 5-10 is not running on a Saturday night, but I do manage to sit down on a new 2-5 table that just opened up. This hand, I pick up Ace-King at the cutoff. To my right is someone that seems like a new player. He was calling very wide and didn't seem like he knew where the action was half the time. I actually had to remind him it was his turn a few times. Anyways, the low jack calls. The hijack, the new player, also calls. I decide to raise it up to $40. Slightly on the bigger side for a 2-5. My intention is to isolate the new player since he basically limp calls anything. The button and the blinds fold, but both the limpers call. It's three-way to a flop of Jack-Jack-10 Rainbow. The action checks to me. Even though I have 2 overs and a gut shot to the nut straight, it's not a great board to c-bet multi-way. I check back. The turn is the Queen of Clubs. The low jack now leads out for $50. The hijack calls. This is the absolute best turn card for my hand, completing the straight. But against a bet and a call, I still can't raise here. If anyone does have a jack in this spot, it could likely be Jack-10 or Jack-Queen. My hand blocks Ace-Jack and King-Jack. So, with a very possible full house out there, I just have to call and assess, even with a straight. I call. The river is a 10. Horrible card, as now any 10x makes a full house as well. However, both villains check to me. I contemplate if I need to turn my hand into a bluff, or just check and take the easy showdown. After thinking for a bit, I decide on neither of those. I think I can go for a value bet here. There are still 9 combos of Ace-Queen left, 9 combos of King-Queen left, and all of those make sense to take a jab on the turn and check the river. Not to mention, the new player can be holding a random ace reg and call off this type of board with ace high. It's super thin, but I go for a value bet of $75, slightly over quarter pot, targeting those hands. The low jack tanks for a while, then calls. The hijack folds. I table my hand to show the straight, and the villain mucks. This hand, I pick up Jack-Queen at the hijack position. Everyone folds to me and I open to $20. The button calls, and both the small blind and big blind calls. It's 4-way to a flop of 9-8-5 with 2 spades. Everyone checks to the button, who bets $35. The small blind folds, the big blind calls. I have 2 overs and a gut shot to the nut straight, so a high equity hand with great odds. I call. The turn is a queen. The big blind checks again. This is a great card that now gives me top pair. However, multi-way, I'm still exercising pot control because one of the more obvious draws on the flop, aside from the flush draw, is an open-ended straight draw with Jack-10 that would have got there on the turn. My specific hand blocking Jack-10 and unblocking the spades would make for a better bluff catcher at this point. I check. The button also checks. The river is a jack. The big blind checks again. I think it's quite likely that the big blind just missed the flush draw with this line and has given up. The button, on the other hand, could have been taking a stab with nothing but position on the flop. He might do it again here if I check to him, and it wouldn't be a great spot for me. I have to factor in that 9-10, 8-10, 7-10, all of which I block, are possible combos that can bet the flop and check the turn. I decide that I don't want to make too tough of a decision here, so I go for a blocker bet of $35. On this board, it would be super tough for the button to raise into 2 players as a bluff without the 10. So I kind of set my own price, so to speak. If I get raised, I'm just letting it go. The button thinks for a while and folds. The big blind also folds, and I take this one down. This table breaks shortly, and I get moved to another one. This hand, I pick up ace-5 of hearts in the middle position. I open to $15. Only the big blind, a solid player, calls. It's heads up into a flop of king 6-4 with 2 hearts. The villain checks. I pick up the nut flush draw here. The king could be a good card for my range, but against a solid player, I have to mix it up sometimes to protect my checking range. I check back. The turn is an offsuit 3. The villain now bets $35. Easy call for me, picking up the open-ender on top of my flush draw. The river is the 3 of hearts. The villain bets $60. I have now made my flush, so I raise for value and make it $150, targeting mostly a king here. The villain folds and I take it down. This is the last interesting hand for this session, as this table also breaks. So I am at the Grand Villa parking lot right now, and the 2-5 games just broke. This is I think it's the first time I've experienced something like this. I played for what feels like just about an hour, and when I got here, it was super busy. They just opened a third 2-5 table, and I just managed to sit down. But that table broke really quickly, and I got moved to a second table, and then just not even like 20 minutes in, that table broke as well, and yeah, here we are. So I'm not sure what to do right now. I might go look for another game in another poker room, or just call it an early night. But yeah. I do not just call it an early night. But first, here are the results of this session. I bought in for $1,500 and cashed out for $1,945. That's a profit of $445. I actually know of a private micro stakes game close by that I used to frequent. I haven't played this game for a while, which is a 12-cent, 25-cent game. So I decided to message my friend and ask if there was a game going tonight. I thought it would be nice to see some old friends. Well, it appears there is a game, so I head over. I was hoping to get into some fun spots to share with you guys. Maybe some all-ins, get sucked out or suck out on someone. Unfortunately, I wasn't involved in a lot of notable hands. There was one hand I flopped top 2 pair, shoved all in for around $20 effective on the turn. Villain folds. There was another hand I turned my pocket 8s into a $10 bluff on the river and got called by a full house. And perhaps the most interesting hand was this one that I wasn't involved in. Donkey number 1 raises pre-flop with Jack Queen. Donkey number 2 calls. On a flop of deuce 10-7, donkey number 1 jams all in for $20. Donkey number 2 calls, and he's actually almost coin flipping here with 9 deuce. Can you do this for me?
Huh?
Can you do this for me?
Hey, burn yet? Burn yet? Burned, all right.
Yeah. Oh, shit.
No, you're good.
You called it. Though I didn't capture much worth sharing, I did have a good time catching up with friends. I was in for $100 and cashed out for $35. With 5 people left, we decided to end the night by shooting for $5 each, which I lost. Congratulations, Flora, for winning the $25 bingo. So, the total for this session is a loss of $70. The next day, I decide that I need more material to complete this episode since the game at Grand Villa ended early the previous night. I head over to Starlight Casino in New West, where the poker room there spreads a 2-3 game. So I am at Starlight Casino right now. I'm just gonna hop in a 2-3 game to just to get some more hands for you guys. On Sundays, I usually like to take a break from poker, but last night I don't think I have enough material
to make it a full episode for you guys. So here I am. Yeah, hopefully I get into some good, interesting spots, and we'll see how that goes.
They had a special promotion for poker players in the form of a $10 voucher that you can use towards food or drinks. And I used it to get a sandwich and tomato bisque soup. The sandwich was alright, but the soup was really good. Anyways, on to some poker. This hand, I pick up 4-5 of hearts at the hijack position. Under the gun limps. Everyone else folds to me. I raise it to $15. The big blind calls and the limper calls. It's three-way to a flop of Jack 10-5 with 2 clubs and no hearts. The big blind checks. Under the gun bets out $30. Not much for me here with bottom pair and a board that doesn't favor my range. I just fold. This hand, I pick up King Queen on the button. There are 4 limpers, and I raise it to $25. Everyone folds except for the hijack. It's heads up into a flop of 10-7-6 with 2 clubs and 1 diamond. The villain checks. Not a good range for me, so I check back. The turn is the 5 of diamonds. The villain now bets $15. With just 2 overs and a king high, my hand doesn't have much showdown value or equity at all. However, I look at the board and see that there are 2 flush draws out there that matches the 2 suits of my hand. At these stakes, players' bet sizes often align with the strength of their hands, so the villain doesn't seem very strong now. I think any of the flush draws completing can allow me to rep a flush on the river. In addition to any club and diamond, there are also a lot of potential 4-card straights on the river that I can bluff with. I call with the sole intention of bluffing if a good scare card hits. The river is the Jack of diamonds. The villain checks. This is almost the perfect scare card. The diamond completes the flush, which I block. The Jack is an overcard to the 10, and my King Queen blocks a lot of Jack combos as well. I follow through with my plan and slide in $100. The villain thinks for a bit and folds. This hand, I pick up Ace Queen in the small blind. The hijack opens to $10. The cutoff calls. The button folds and the action is on me. Against the late position open and caller, I'm just gonna squeeze with this hand. I take a peek at everyone's stacks and I see that the hijack only has about $60. With this depth, I don't think there's much merit to 3-betting a size below that. I just want to either take the pot down now or go all in with the short stack, so I re-raise to $60. The big blind folds. It turns out that the hijack had a $1 chip behind that I couldn't see, so he's all in for $61. The cutoff calls. I call the extra dollar. Not exactly the situation I was hoping for. The flop comes Jack 8-6 with 2 hearts. With one player already all in and no side pot, I don't see any reason for betting. I check. The villain checks. The turn is a brick. I check. The villain checks. The river bricks. We both check again. The cutoff tables pocket 10s. Everyone mucks and he takes it down. This hand, I pick up 6-7 of spades in the big blind. There's a button straddle of $5. The small blind folds. I call for an extra $2. Under the gun +1 calls, the cutoff calls, and the button checks. It's 4-way to a flop of Jack Queen 6 with 2 spades. Very good flop for me with a pair and a flush draw. But out of position multi-way, I'm never leading out. I check. Under the gun +1 bets $15. The cutoff and button folds. The action is back on me and it's now heads up. I'm never folding here, but I do have the option of calling or raising. I decide to go for the more aggressive route, so I can also take advantage of some fold equity. Also, a check raise in this spot, which was initially 4-way, reps a lot of strength. I raise it to $45, and the villain folds. This hand, I'm in the big blind again, this time with 8-9 of hearts. The button decides to straddle again for $5. The small blind calls, I call, the hijack calls, the cutoff folds. The button doesn't check this time. He raises to $15. Everyone calls. It's four-way to a flop of 778 rainbow. Everyone checks. The turn is a 5 of hearts. The small blind checks again. This is a pretty good turn card that doesn't change much. I still have top pair and only lose to someone trapping with a 7. I decide to go for a small bet of $15. The range of this board is really bad for the preflop raiser, but for all the callers, I might get some value from any straight draw or even a 5x hand. Interestingly, everyone folds except for the button, who's the preflop aggressor. The river is a 10. Not much for me to do here but check. The villain checks back. I table my hand, and it's good, as he shows ace-king. This hand, I pick up ace-king in the middle position. I open to $15, only the big blind calls. It's heads up into a flop of jack-queen 6 rainbow. The villain checks. I c-bet for $10, and that's good enough to take it down. This hand, I pick up king 10 of spades in the middle position. I open to $10. Everyone folds except for the big blind. It's heads up into a flop of 5-4 deuce with 2 spades. The villain checks. I got 2 overs and a flush draw. Pretty good spot to c-bet in position. I bet $10. The villain calls. The turn is an offsuit queen. The villain checks again. I think betting here or checking for a free card is fine. With the queen on the turn though, which can't be too helpful for the villain if he called the flop, I think it's a good scare card to continue barreling. This time I go for a bigger bet, close to pot size at $40. The villain calls again. The river is a 9 of spades, and the villain quickly announces all in. With the second nut flush, not much for me to do but quickly call. I table my hand, and not surprisingly, it's good. He had ace-jack with the ace of spades, which it seems like he decided to turn into a bluff on the river. I think this hand may have started his journey of tilt, because shortly after, he lost a medium-sized pot to this older gentleman to my right, and they were not exactly civil to each other. They exchanged some pretty mean words in Cantonese, and since I understand it, I decided to translate and share with you guys so you have a taste of what some vulgar Canto sounds like.
English, please.
No cooking. No cooking. Because you only call, so I want to kick you out.
Kích nó out. Lấy mất yếu cho nó các bạn. Yếu chả thế. Billy English, please.
Yeah, option.
Vậy á, lấy vậy không? Có được oi nè. Đây là hôm nay.
Một quản.屌你個乜？你輸尾咩？
你輸唔係啊，我輸係啊。
我輸你咪算夠數咯。
我輸我條命就得啦，你知唔知道啊？
This verbal feud went on for a few hands. The staff handled it really well though, de-escalating the situation, giving both of them stern warnings. So though the vibe was slightly awkward for a bit, it was back to normal shortly. But it was getting close to dinner time, and I was starting to get hungry, so I start to rack up. This session I bought in for $700 and cashed out for $935. That is a profit of $235. That'll bring this episode to an end. Please remember to subscribe if you enjoy my videos. See you guys next episode.